my beautiful plant people, how are we today? For those of you that have never met me before, I am Sam from Plant Collector Melbourne, and today we find ourselves back at PCM for this video because we are going to be doing corrugated plants. And for those of you that don't know what corrugated means, it is synonymous with textured, pebbled, and bullate, which means that they are lumpy and bumpy, and these are some of my absolute favorite plants. So without further ado, let's get into it. Woo! We are going to be looking at 10 different plants from all different genuses and different families. So they are not just specifically aroids. There is probably one of them that is in a different family, but majority of them are aroids. We've got things like Anthurium, Philodendron, and all these different other ones, but I wish to keep on the hush hush. We are going to be displaying all of the plants here unless that I've actually got them in the store, and I don't think that I have that many. And for our first plant, it is the one and only. When I think about textured and bullate plants, it always comes to mind first, and it is Anthurium Luxurians. It is the OG, it is the GOAT when it comes to textured, delicious plants. And so here we shall put a photo. I do actually have a Luxurians at the back, which I should go get. But this thing, if you are a plant collector, you have always wanted this in your wish list. I don't care if you're not into Anthurians, Luxurians is just one of those things that are just so dang gorgeous, and it is because it is dark, it is lumpy and bumpy. So one, from experience, but two, after talking to a lot of our growers, I have found that there is a consensus that Luxurians are difficult, which is true, but also not true. If you are an overwaterer, there is a very high chance that you are going to bog this plant, give it too much water, and for it to rot. But if you are an underwaterer, I find that Luxurians is definitely more suited to your needs. They do not need a lot of water. And I have definitely experienced with my own personal Luxurians that they will drop lower leaves at a drop of a hat if you overwater them. So for those of you that are looking to grab one or have one already, it is a reminder to definitely pull back on the watering compared to your other anthuriums. So our plant number 2, and of course it is the one, the only Anthurium corrugatum, and it is just so intuitive because we are looking at corrugated leaves, hence the name Anthurium corrugatum. And corrugatum is just the most pebbliest, gorgeous thing. There is definitely a lot of plants that look similar, which we'll get into a bit later on, but this guy is different to, let's say, like a Luxurians, because he is more of like a limey color. He's not like a dark black thing like a Luxurians. Given with Luxurians you can get them in a silvery platinum-y color, but corrugatum normally or typically comes more of a lighter green. Now, compared to other very similar corrugated plants, this one is actually longer than other ones. And so I have never had a corrugatum in my life, but from other people's, actually that is a lie. I actually have had one corrugatum, but it died. The one thing that people have really drilled into my brain is that corrugated plants are really difficult plants to look after. And I think that corrugatum I definitely have had and have definitely killed because I didn't have high enough humidity. And so corrugatum, in my opinion, definitely holds true to needing humidity and all that jazz about anything that is very like textured is at like higher altitude, which means that they need higher humidity. And I do think that corrugatum definitely needs more humidity. So it is not a very easy plant to look after in the corrugated realm. So the next one is actually one of my absolute favorite plants, and I think that several years ago, I would say maybe about 2-3 years ago, it was all hyped up about, and then now it is completely under the radar, and I just don't know why. It is commonly known as Anthurium clitomoides, but is actually actually called Anthurium pacifica, and it is a vining anthurium that is pebbly, that is gorgeous, and that is super dark. And so I have one of these. I actually got given it as a gift several years ago when I went on a trip to Cairns. It is currently being looked after by Ted because he has a vivarium which it is going wild in, but it is definitely one of my favorites because it is an anthurium that has an interesting growth pattern that vines. And so I remember back in the day, I would say it was about 3 years ago, that these would easily go over the 4-digit. So it would be in the thousands. And nowadays, I think that no one really wants them, and that they're probably in the 3 digits, probably at the lower, like 100 to 200, and I just don't understand why. It is so beautiful. I have never personally propagated it myself, but supposedly it is easy because it is a vining plant. But I would assume that the propagation would be somewhat easy, and maybe that's why they have plummeted in price. But I just think that I just don't understand why no one is talking about it. It is one of my favorite plants. Next, we have Philodendron furcatum, and these guys have come into the store, I think, twice. Once when we were up in Sydney doing the Collectors Plant Fair, and 2 here at the store in one of our previous unboxings. If you haven't watched that and wonder what we get in the store, I will leave the link up here. But Philodendron furcatum is one of the philodendrons with lots and lots of texture that is, of course, corrugated, but I do think that philodendron are not very readily known to have a lot of corrugation, so this may be one of the very few philodendrons that has corrugated leaves. I don't know about you guys, but all of the furcatums that are here in Australia look limey to me. Like, they just don't look as healthy as overseas, and I don't know whether it is like a genetic thing and that the environment or the environment is playing a really big thing. In my personal opinion, I think that it is environment, that our philodendrons, we think that in Australia they need a lot of light, which is theoretically true. Majority of philodendron really enjoy lots of bright light, but I think that these guys might actually enjoy lower light, and we are overpowering them with light, and that is why in Australia a lot of them are coming out like a limey color or like discolored. Is just my theory, but if you are also in Australia, leave down below what you guys think. But that is my little hypothesis on Philodendron furcatum. And unlike other philodendrons, they are definitely fussier in terms of humidity. These guys like a lot of humidity. Now let us move on to something that is outside the aroid world, and it is Labisia turtleback. And there are a lot of individuals up north that are starting to get into Labisia, and I can say proudly that I'm also starting to get into it. But this turtleback was definitely, when I was getting introduced to Labisia, that this one stood out to me the most. And it is definitely because of the color, it is because of the texture, it is because of the really wide leaves. And the leaves, of course, resemble a turtleback, which is why it is called that, and it is just superb. I think that the color is not very neon, but is very contrasting in color, which is why it is one of my favorite plants. I do not have that many Labisia in my personal collection. I got a Labisia pumila, and that is about it. But Labisia are really awesome because you can actually propagate them via the leaves and not needing like nodes and stems. I have never personally done it. I wouldn't know how to do it if I tried, but maybe one day I will try. Incoming, another one of my favorite plants, and it is Anthurium rotolantei, also known as Anthurium rotolanteum. And you guys have probably seen this in all of my personal collection videos, that this is definitely top tier, one of my favorite plants that I own. And it is very similar to a corrugatum. I think that it has like a wider shape, but the best thing about this plant is that it is so easy to care for. And unlike all of these other corrugated, bullite textured things, is that they are more fussy or require more humidity. From experience, From the greenhouse not having any misters, from the grow tent dropping quite a bit in humidity, rotolanteum can handle it. And even the cooler temperatures, which is one of the reasons why I love it so much. It has been so forgiving to me over the last couple of years. And so if you guys were ever wanting to invest in a beautiful corrugated plant that is easy to look after, I would highly, highly, highly recommend a rotolanteum. We are past halfway, my friends, and this plant is definitely on my wish list. I have seen it twice in some collections here in Melbourne, and it is Anthurium splendidum. And when I see these plants in other people's collections, they are in cloches or they're in like super high humidity with really great airflow, because these guys supposedly need really high humidity. And I'm pretty sure it is the same with corrugatum. But I think that these guys are the most texturous, the most bumpy, the most pebbled plants that I have seen. Particularly, even when they have like smaller leaves, the bumps and the ridges are just out of this world. It's one of those things where if you found a really bumpy leaf and you put like a microscope to it, you don't even need that with this plant, because you can see every crevice, every bump. It is truly a spectacular plant. I would say that this would be on my higher part of my wish list, but then I remember how should I put this? I'm not going to say lazy. How lower maintenance I give my plants, and I just don't think that I, at this point in my life, can give it the care that it needs, that really high, intense, almost helicopter-y watching for the plant. I'm thinking maybe one day if I ever get the greenhouse at my place up and going and the humidity is really incredible, but until then, this one is going to be on the bystanding list until my circumstances change. For those of you that are not new to the channel, you know that I love my Rhaphidophora family, particularly my anthuriums, and we talk a lot about anthuriums, but I do like to challenge myself and put some things that you probably have never heard before or are outside the genus family sometimes, the genus or family sometimes. So the next one is actually a piper, and it is called Piper parmatum. And this thing, when I saw this thing for the first time, it was in Wynn's collection. So for those of you that do not know Wynn, I will link a tour of her collection up above, because this thing, when you see it, you will be like, wow. So when I first saw it, I thought it was an alocasia, but nay, it is actually a piper. And this thing was black. When I first saw it, I was like, Wynn, I need that in my life. And I think that the growing pattern is very similar to an alocasia, but for this piper, it's not the typical corrugation that is like super bumpy per se. It's almost like the leaf is flat, but it like caves in so that the veins go inwards. Like let's say like a luxurians where the whole leaf blade is bumpy throughout. It's more like this piper is flat and it goes in. I hope that makes sense. Like little divots rather than like lumpy and bumpy. I mean, I don't know. Hopefully that makes sense. But regardless, if I ever get the chance, possibly asking Wynn if there is ever a baby or a pup, but this is also another plant that is at the top of my wish list. So the next one is actually a Rhaphidophora. So we're coming back into the Rhaphidophora family, our favorites, and it is called Rhaphidophora Tenuis. And this guy kind of reminds me of the Anthurium clitomoides if it was a Rhaphidophora, and it is really cute, especially when they're like very little leaves. The new growth comes out like this gorgeous burgundy red, and I think that it is a really gorgeous shingling plant. So unlike the clitomoides, I wouldn't say is like a shingler. I would say that it's more like a viner. I mean, similar. I think shingle plants are more like close together, whereas clitomoides has a very long stem or vine, and then the petioles come out. And it may come out similarly, but it doesn't come out like flat against the wall. So very similar to here, we'll have a bonus corrugated plant, which is the Ficus villosa. And so that guy is super beautiful as well, very velvety, and it has like little cute fluffy hairs on it. And similar to the Rhaphidophora Tenuis is that it goes onto a wall and shingles up the wall. My friends, we have come to the very last plant, the 10th plant, if we do not count the Ficus villosa. So it is none other than Anthurium rugulosum, and this guy is definitely in Australia. I've had it and killed it myself. So in Australia we have a form that is called the corrugatum form. I'm not quite sure what the difference is in the other forms. Maybe it's possibly the shape. This guy is more like a rotolanteum or a corrugatum, but because it is more of like that limey color. But in my experience, they are definitely more like love heart rather than like with the corrugatum, which is like a lot longer. So it could be just because it's our form that we have in Australia, but the ones that I have seen / had but killed was definitely more like round and love hearty. So my friends, that wraps up this week's video for the 10 corrugated plants. And let me tell you, when I was doing my research, I found about over 20 different plants. So if you enjoyed this list of corrugated plants, do let me know down below, because I'm more than happy to do a part 2 of this series and hopefully have even more plants that you have not seen or heard of before. Let's also chat below and tell me which plant is your favorite from today, or if you have some other corrugated goodies that you wish to share with other people. If you are enjoying these plant lists, I will leave one of our playlists up above for you to keep watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!